Hello, good day. This is Ma'am Jennifer and welcome to IS 103. So in this video, we will discuss the core activities of enterprise architecture. And to recap, we have this 8 core activities of enterprise architecture, starting off with defining the IT strategy down to managing risk involved in IT. The first activity is about defining the rules for the future evolution of IT and identifying strategic initiatives to be pursued. So basically, half of the activities of enterprise architecture are strategic by nature. So evolving the IT landscape, for example, entails drawing the future information system landscape, which certainly gives a strategic direction. So, in defining the IP strategy, the catchwords there are the mission statements, the strategy, the maxim process. So, this strategy sets up the principle guiding all the subsequent strategic decisions, and thus, this is the root and point of departure for the strategy. So, defining the IT strategy positions IT in the enterprise environment and future directions and ginadefine dinhi how IT can be better utilized to attain business goals. So the process of defining the IT strategy consists of 3 steps. First is defining the goals to be pursued over time span covered by the strategy. Second is to stipulate the rules that dictates how these goals are to be reached. And the last process is on identifying the initiatives that moves the enterprise IT towards the goal. Now let's focus on the processes, the 3 processes or the steps in defining the IT strategy. So the first one is on the defining goals. So they said that a useful goal should have a specific, measurable, actionable, relevant, and time bounded qualities or the so called SMART. But sa tinuod nga practice, one sometimes find that goal lack of some or all of the SMART qualities. So according to Mac and Frey, they have this list of some caricatures of goals that are, for instance, absurdly unspecific. For example, we have increase our market share, make our product more attractive. Another is keep existing customer and acquire new ones. So as employees, that will be involved or who will be involved to mobilize the goals, maglisod ta as to how to achieve each goal and how to measure the progress. And for sure, even si manager maglisod kung asa magsugod sa ing-ani nga type sa goals, no, sa atong kumpanya. Because goals should clarify what and how employees are expected to deliver. And a choice of your goal implies a mandate to act on, and the maxim process we shall describe a little later. No, i-discuss na to later on sa ning maxim process di ay that can help in pushing a business board to make it. So several flavors of the term goal are in use. So ang uban nga mga companies are talking about the objective, some are talking about requirements, and others swear by formulating visions. So kaning mga flavors have their point, but in terms of the bottom line, no, sa atong subject. So it is all about agreeing on what is wanted, how eagerly it is wanted, and maybe who wants it. So the second process of defining the IT strategy is on the stipulating the rules. So in the second process of defining the IT strategy, it requires intense collaboration between business and the IT. So according to Broadbent and his co-author, this regards the involvement of senior business executives in the definition of IT strategy as the crucial nga factor in turning IT from a cost-generating infrastructure to a business enabler. Nevertheless, sa practice na pod, lisod gid i-convince ang mga business executives to get involved sa ing-ani nga mga activities, especially kung sa ilahang end walay clear ang direction sa activities. So as proven approach to tackling this obstacle, okay, of course, problema 'di ba if the top management or katong inyong mga business executives will not get involved, will not participate in the creation of your goals and direction of the company. So, ang proven nga approach is to make use of the so-called management by maxims process. So it boils down to gathering the senior business and IT representatives for an intense one-day nga brainstorming workshop. So with this, ang pain of business executives to devote some time to IT is thereby kept at the minimum. So of course, isa lang siya kaadlaw. So to make the most of such a day, so naalang tay tatlo ka topics na ang hisgutan ninyo diha, no? If you really wanted to involve your business executives sa inyong meeting. So agenda are definition of the business maxims, derivation of IT maxims out of the business maxims. What else? Agreement on the extent of shared services and infrastructure support. So when we say maxims, it is defined as the statement that specifies a practical course of conduct. Tingnan na lang siya kasayon. Okay, so Um, in addition to the second process of defining the IT strategy, so we have this so-called business outlooks. So business rules sometimes depend on the outlook of the technical and business people in the firm. But there are fundamental outlooks they need to consider. No, lahi-lahi man gud tag outlook. Ang tanan businesses lahi-lahi silag outlook, lahi-lahi silag panlantaw, no? But there are fundamentals or basic outlooks nga kailangan nato dumdumon. Unsa to sila? We have first fighting for survival. So this pertains to the budget cuts, the layoffs, and the cancellation of initiatives characterized this outlook. Another is um, the emphasis is on the cost reduction. Another outlook is on the maintaining competitiveness. The enterprise is economically balanced between cost savings and investment in initiatives. So budgets are flats and bago nga mga initiatives must be thoroughly justified. What else? We also have breaking away. Okay. And when we say breaking away, these are the happy days for new initiatives wherein budgets are generous, no? Pwede manghatag ang manager diha og mga bonuses, mga rewards and whatever. And the challenge for IT is in keeping up with the growth or even better driving it. So next to business outlook that influences the need for standardization and integration of business and IT is the competitive strategy. So the economist Michael Porter, if you are familiar with the author, describes three strategies that on a rough scales classify all approaches to competition. These are first cost efficiency, differentiation, and focus strategy. So when we say cost efficient, this is offering a better price is the main competitive advantage. The emphasis on the is on the operational excellence to keep your cost low. No, so mo na siya para makakompete ka sa market, kailangan nina nato tan-awon ang cost sa atong mga product. We also have product differentiation. So the enterprise tries to combat competitors by better product in terms of quality or in terms of customer care. So ang emphasis pa diha is on the product leadership or the customer intimacy. And then we have focus strategies. So ang company or the business gains advantage from occupying market niche. That is why kailangan gid nimo tanawon asa man ang akong focus nga product. Kay kung kani akong product nga focus and then na-identify pud nimo nga naay market ani nga specific location and then makakompete gid ka sa market. So the author Garner Research has elaborated another methodology for formulating IT strategies in a series of paper published during the year 2002 and 2003. So a strategy takes a vision or objective and bounds the option for attaining it. So mao ni siya ang iyahang another strategy, no? So the most cited concept from Garner's paper is the two-dimensional grid shown in table 3-2. So kung makita ninyo na two-dimensional siya, no? So sa diri sa taas na may makita nga mga IT strategy and then sa kilid natay inputs from business strategy. So this uh, grid can be used to check the completeness of IT strategy. On the other hand, kani pod siya nga matrix or grid ensures that all aspect of the IT strategy that may require a decision farther down the road are guided by the rules. So kani nga mga list, kani siya nga grid ginalista ni ang tanan inputs from the business strategy that can have impact on the IP and therefore must not be neglected. So ang seven input from the business strategy are spelled out as follows. We have geographic. This is about the expansion and national and international distribution of enterprise. We also have governance. So who makes the decisions and how they are made? Are the business units or the geographic region relative to autonomous, or is there a strong central authority in terms of governance? We also have the future. So this concerns how far the time horizon of the business plan is. They can be a long-term, mid-term, or even bound only to what has been done next. We also have legacy IT. Is there a will to make drastic changes, or is the attitude conservative and committed to the current way of operations? We also have another input is the virtual. This is about the involvement and integration of service providers and other partners. Like what capabilities and processes are kept in-house and which are handed over to the partners. So, syempre, na may mga processes good nato nga kita lang within the firm ang mubuhat, but there are processes pag nga dili na nato kaya buhaton mo nang ginapatrabaho nato sa uban. Okay, sa atong mga partners. We also have another input is the customer. So dinhi imong tan-awon kung unsa ka strong does the enterprise want to engage to its customer. Basin bag ang focus ninyo is on product marketing lang pero wala ninyo gitan-aw kinsa day customer, kinsa day mo palit sa akong product. Okay, another is the funding. Who is paying and how much? How are projects funded and what are the criteria for granting budgets? Kasi gara baya kung magnegosyo ta kay kani atong problema, right? All right. So these inputs must be taken into account according to Gartner, the author of this grid. So if they are not available right away, the enterprise architect must seek answers and hold the business side accountable for giving them. So the business imperatives are then mapped to the five components of the IT strategy nga nasa taas. So kung makita ninyo, so natay infrastructure. This is the technology component comprised of hardware, software, network elements. We also have service. This concerns the services provided by the IT department to the enterprise, to partners, and even to customers. We also have applications. This is about the portfolio of applications, their business functions, and the process and the organization it supports. We also have integration. All means making the enterprise act as a single unit are subsumed under this component. And then the last is the sourcing. This component addresses the source of all the people who perform the IT related strategic work. So, in particular, it sets rules for selecting internal employees or external service providers. So the next process of defining the IT strategy is identifying the initiatives. So just envisioning the goals and stating the rules does not get things going, no. So one also has to identify the strategic initiatives that the people should start working on. So we intentionally use the term initiative, Kai. The plan of action is usually yet too coarse to speak of well-scoped nga projects. It is not about the proper project portfolio management. The how is widely unclear, and then wala tay target nga architecture in place, and all we have is intentions to start with. Now, um, it is the CIO or Chief Information Officer who signs up on it and has to answer for it. Nevertheless, enterprise architects usually participate in the strategic boards and meetings, prepare decisions, or elaborate drafts coming out of such meeting. There can be parts of the IT strategy in which enterprise architects have little to say, for instance, in defining service desk policies. But even if they are not primary speakers in these parts, they are at least informed and or consulted. So enterprise architect is deeply involved in the shaping the enterprise IT strategy. So the second core activity of enterprise architecture is on the modeling the architecture. So this is about making models for the current and the future states. There is a set of techniques, tools, and standards for modeling. So in this activity, the catchwords are modeling, EA tools, architecture, blueprint, architecture repositories. So when we say models, these are the abstractions of some part of reality. It is about representing a system using some kind of graphical notation. So making architecture models probably is what most people primarily associate with the profession of the architect. No? So kung moing kag model, murag architect gid atong madumduman nga iyahan na trabaho. But then we also have the software developers who are expected to so who are expect that the architect to come along with a blueprint. So mag-expect ning mga software developers nga kaning architect dapat mo buhat sila na sila ay ma-generate nga blueprint para mo isundon sa mga software developers. Then we have this managers pod, no, sa business na to, nga mag-expect they have to gaze at annoyingly complex diagrams when an enterprise architect starts explaining why a cable fire affected so many business processes, no? So mo ni ang problema if ang imuhang manager is not really into technology, no? Wala siya kayo background in terms of technicalities, in terms of system development, kay magproblema gina siya sayop sa mga magproblema na siya og sabot sa mga diagrams nga um, ginabuhat sa mga architect or sa mga design. So balik ta sa models again. These are abstractions of some parts of reality. It is about um, the representation of a system using some kind of a graphical notation. So they suppress relevant details but strive for being accurate with respect to the points of interest. So ang mga models are always bound to a certain purpose. So otherwise, there is no way to tell what is relevant and what is not. So si enterprise architect, for instance, models the way IT is currently used in the enterprise or in the business as well as the roadmap to future use. So what goes into the model and what is left out depends on the model's use cases, and there is a wide range of things that can be done with an enterprise architecture model. So, namely, we have design and planning, analysis and assessment, implementation and operations. What else? Communication and enforcement. When we say design and planning, so the model is a tool for designing the future evolution of the IT enterprise. So it is a means to identify the gap between the as is and to be and the corresponding needs for action. We also have analysis and assessment. The model helps analyze the impact of incidents or changes. It allows assessing issues such as strategic fit, compliance with laws and regulations, or risk. We also have implementation and operations. The model is a framework or of orientation for detailed designs. It is knowledge based for operating and maintaining information systems. We also have communication and enforcement. So the model is the foundation for explaining and motivating changes. It is a means to assure that the intended architecture is actually implemented in the intended way. So, ang communication is a use case deserving special attention to reach a common understanding. Again, communication is a use case deserving special attention. So, the reason is to reach a common understanding. So, the enterprise architect uses the model to answer specific questions of stakeholders. So, in chapter 4, about the enterprise architecture frameworks, it distinguishes as many as four different architectures that are layered from the business architectures down to technology components. So the four different architectures are the business architecture, the data architecture, application, and technology architecture. So this process map is one of the many modeling nga pwede nato gamiton. So if we wanted to model the architecture, so this process map draws a relationship among business processes, the organizational units in charge of them, and the applications supporting these units in their duties. It highlights, for example, that the organization unit B uses rather old 2.3 release of the customer relationship management system, whereas the unit E, is already equipped with the more modern release 3.0. So as a consequence, kaning si unit B, si Unit B na to has to work with the legacy applications GDA and um, DES to manage the whole pickup and delivery processes. Yeah. So another kind of view that is widely used to visualize relationship is the cluster diagram. So in the figure 3-5, again, it's a highly simplified example of a more technically oriented cluster diagram that draws relationship between technology platforms and applications based on those platforms. So the applications are sorted into cluster, no? Naka-cluster siya according to the technology they are built on. The reader can learn from it. For example, that release 7.1 of the settlement application is built on an exceptional technology mix of MS SQL Server and JBoss that might not accord with the enterprise technology standard. Another model is the model that they have a time dimension. So the models do not merely present a snapshot of the architectures at a particular point in time, they capture the current state, the future desired state, and possibly a roadmap of transition states along the way. So, see figure 3-6 is a simplified example of an application roadmap addressing the evolution of application landscape. So, kung tanawon ninyo, mura lang siya og Gantt chart, no? Makita nimo nga kani nga application nga gidevelop nato mo ni iyahang timeline. Ayan. So, na-status sa baba kung medyo dili siya dark, status plan na siya katong dark na gid kayong black na gid siya, pasabot ato retirement na siya. So in terms of development mao pod ni siya nga shading, and status production mao ni siya nga shading. So pwede ta mag-model oging ana, no? So what else? Another type of model is the flipped book visualization of an application rationalization. So another frequently used means of eliciting aha effect of how things will evolve is kanisha, flip book of consecutive states. So mani siya nga figure. The two consecutive states shows the simplified application landscape of a logistic company clustered by functional domains. So the arrow mark the data flow with regard to a central business object. The flipbook now clearly demonstrate the effect of an application rationalizing on this flow. Okay. So, but in our subject, so we have this modeling standard nga ginagamit, no? So the notation, terminologies, and conceptual meta model of enterprise architecture models are not standardized in practice man gid. So kung makita ninyo mo tong daghan kayo siya og modeling model types kay wala gi standard, no? Kung ikaw ang developer, kung ikaw ang architect, you are free to choose from the different available nga mga modeling tools, no, nga pwede gamiton nimo when you model the enterprise architecture. So, so unlike sa software design where most practitioners nowadays nag-agree sila nga UML ang gamiton. So if you kung nakadungog na mo anang UML, it is a language in which to express software architectures. There is no such convention about enterprise architecture, no. So sa kung na-standard sa kaning software development sa enterprise architecture wala. So some core concept such as business process can be found in most models. Even there are notations and maybe also the definitions are not unanimous among enterprises. The modeling language being used in an enterprise is formed by the vocabulary of concept that has grown over the years, condensing much of the organization's view of the world as well as vendor development taxonomy of the modeling tools that are in place. So kaning figure 3-8 is a model created using the Archimate. So Archimate is a modeling standard that is supposed to overcome the obstacle that up to now remains the only serious attempt to standardize EA notation. No? Again, as mentioned, walay standard nga modeling tool for enterprise architectures, and then nakita nila nga si Archimate pa lang ang murag medyo maka-address ato nga problema. So the figure shows an example of how the Archimate models a simplified pick-up and delivery process that belongs to the core express business of any logistic company. So we have there a customer can ring up a call center and request the pickup of a parcel from some place in order to get it transported to a destination address. The standard distinguishes three modeling layers, natay business, natay application, and technology layers. They are depicted by different shadings in the figure 3-8. So makita nimo diha ang technology are darker shades. So at least ma-differentiate nimo nga oy mo ni ang technology nga part, application part kaning medyo dili ra kay dark, and then white mo to siya ang business nga aspect sa Archimate. So ayun, so let's briefly traverse these layers from top to bottom to get to know the most important concept of the Archimate taxonomy. So akong gi-zoom gamay ang iyang figure. So first, we learn from the business layer that the pick up and delivery process consists of three sub-processes. We have the pick up, transport, and delivery processes. Furthermore, the process implements the pickup service, a business service offered to customers as a part of the parcel shipment product governed by an express contract. So the service is supported by a call center agent, ayan, si call center agent, and used via the order acceptance business interface by customers that have registered account. The business is triggered when a customer calls up the pickup service and thereby issues a pickup order business event. And then the customer submits information such as consignee address, which is comprised in the new shipment business object. Ang next layer is the application layer. The application layer, it tells us that the pickup subprocess is supported by the order management application, and then the application offers a process order application function that is used by a call center agent via the order entry API. So the user interface of the application. So furthermore, the order management application invokes an API of the dispatching application to assign orders to pickup route. So the bottom layers eventually shows how infrastructure components such as database systems, servers, and network segments host the order management application. Though rather simplified, the example conveys an impression of how Archimate models entities, in particular of the granularity of details it addresses. So this is quite suitable for modeling larger part of enterprise IT landscape, and the Archimate vocabulary, which is summed up in table 3-3, no? Ayun, so mo ani ang murag summarize concept sa Archimate na taxonomy na siya tatlo ka layers: business, applications and technology, and then siya ay mga categories in terms of information, behavior, and structures. So again, as mentioned, na ay medyo problema pagid ang modeling in terms modeling the enterprise architecture, and mao ni supposedly ang dream enterprise architecture nato that involves the integrated enterprise architecture tool nga naa si case tool, naa si service incident problem management tool, naa ang configuration management database, the knowledge sharing portal, enterprise resource planning, and project portfolio management tool. The third core activity of enterprise architecture is about the evolving the IT landscape. So this is about the application rationalization and optimizing application landscapes with respect to a certain predefined criteria. So evolving a service or a process portfolio and modeling the next release of different architectures in business, IS, and technology are part of this activity. So we also have the service-oriented architecture that belongs to this activity as an architectural style aligning business and the IT. So catchwords for this activity or for this core EA activity is roadmap, application rationalization, SOA, quantitative aspect, KPI, service portfolio, IT, and IT transformation. Ayan. So in this activity of enterprise architecture, we will be meeting application rationalizing or identifying applications in its key performance indicators. We also have assessing applications, assessing alternatives, general IT transformation, and service-oriented architecture. Okay, so the first major step in such an initiative of application rationalization is evidently to get an overview of the current set of application. So, kung mo nang kailangan na to siya i-rationalize. So, as a prerequisite, there must be some guidelines that nail down what counts as an application. But first, let us define what is an application. Though the term application is a central notion of IT, right? There is no commonly accepted or precise definition of these terms. So ikaw as a person, pwede ka magbuhat-buhat o kagalingon ng mong definition ani. But according to the open group, it defines the term in its TUGAF standard as a deployed and operational IT system that supports business functions and services. For example, a payroll application or a payroll system. In terms of our school, it could be an enrollment system, a accounting system. So applications use data and are supported by different or multiple technology components but are distinct from the technology components that support the application. So these are the guidelines or criteria on how a business assess the application. First, they should provide end user functionality. They provide cohesive functionality having a common purpose. They are somewhat self contained deployment units. They are logical entities in the sense that they are, to some extent, independent from the implementation technology. They have the owner who is responsible for development and maintenance. What else? So next step, no, after assessing the applications, once na-identify na nimo, na-assess na nimo unsa ning mga applications nga kailangan sa inyong enterprise, the next step is to quantify what should be improved. Yeah. So this implies the agreement on some key performance indicators or KPIs that one wants to optimize, no, or numeric values that should be increased or decreased. So if you recall, Ian Miller in the Bank for Us case, and his team decide that the CIO's directive is best measured by the following KPIs. We have the total cost of ownership or the TCO of an application. So this entails all costs related to the application. So the development of new features, maintenance, trouble ticket resolution, server cost, license fees, what else? Whatever else is on the bill for changing or running the application. Another key performance indicator is the strategic fit of an application. So, kaninga KPI tells to what extent an application is considered legacy on the scale from 1 to 10. So, it captures both technology and business aspect. An application scores high if it fits well with the envisioned business architecture. So it is built on standard and products that are considered future proof and is in its prime with regard to the software life cycle. We also have value contribution of an application. This measures reflects the business value generated by the application. So there are only few cases where ang katong mga definite amount of money can directly be associated with an application. So in most cases, the value contribution will be unitless value like strategic fit. So the value contribution summarizes the importance of the application for the business process it supports, how well it supports them, and unsang revenue stream are involved in this process. So this KPI reflects the business criticality of the application as well as the impact of replacing or retiring it on the organization. We also have fan in and fan out of application. So the fan in of an application A counts the different data flows entering A in the course of process directly or indirectly supported by A. So kaninga data flows can be interface invocations by other applications. So messages consumed by A or global data structure, for instance, database tables nga ginabasa ni A, and then the fan out on the other hand counts how many data flows leaves E or A. So this can be interface invocations by A and on other application messages sent out by A or global data structure modified by A. Okay, so the agreement on the KPIs in the previous slides prepares the groundwork for assessing the applications in the application catalog. So ang goal is to come up with this kind of table, no? So mo nang atong gina-assess ang ato ang mga application para maka-come up ta og ingani and para ma-score nato kung unsa tong mga application ang naay mga scores in terms of the katong previous nga gi-discuss nako no sa previous slides. Ayan. So this is to visualize the score of application in four different quadrants. Okay, so gamit ni siya, so makaproduce na pud ta og ingani. So in assessing the application, dapat mag-categorize nato siya into four different quadrants, no? So the first quadrant is the star. So makita niyo na yung star diha. Ang star, tanan nga application nga belong sa star ensures the current and future business of the enterprise. They are already used in important business processes and primarily support innovative products or services. The company backs on as a key differentiators in comparison to their competitors. So they are importance for the future business, no? is expected to grow. So furthermore, kadtong mga application nga naa sa star nga quadrant fit well into the technology roadmap. We also have the quadrant wildcats. Ayan. Kapag ang application nabutang din sometimes ginatawag po ni sila question mark. So have a certain potential for future business but do not contribute much on the current business operations. So in a sense, these are prototype that still have to prove their usefulness. So they typically explore how new technologies can help seize new business opportunities. So mo na nga mga types sa application ang mabilong sa ato ang wildcats. We also have sa ubos natay cash cows. So lahi-lahi sila ano no terminologies no in terms of quadrants or categories. So kita as architects or part of the system development team, pwede po ta mo-create og kaugalingon nato ang categories no. But with this case again natay cash cows. So the cash cows form the operational backbone of the current business. Kani nga mga application ensure today's core operations and generate the largest share of business from IT. Any outage of such a system is a pain and is likely to end up on the CIO's desk. But ang mga cash cows does not fit nicely into the envisioned future operations and is technology-wise considered legacy na sila. Another quadrant is the poor dogs. They are not important applications, neither today nor in the future. So in some cases, they are just residues, the quick wins for an application rationalization initiative. So in other cases, they are support systems that are somehow needed but do not make a crucial difference to the enterprise. Kaluoy ba? So a typical example is an application for tracking working hours. Ayan. So these four categories have different key qualities requirements and therefore must be treated in different ways. So, unsaon din yung pag-treat ni sila nga mga quadrants. So, makita nato sa figure 3-1, 1-2. So, kapag ang application na belong sa stars, so mauni nga mga treatment ang buhaton nimo sa ilaha. If it's on the quadrant wildcats, kanipod sila. So, ayan, limited budget and critical cost control. No, i-control nimo ang mga budget nimo in terms sa atong mga application nga na-belong dinhi. We also have cash cows. Maupod ni siya ang imuhang consideration and sa poor dogs, maupod ni siya. So, first on the list is avoid na ka mag-invest sa ingani nga type nga mga software. Ayan. So, next step in terms of this EA activity is kailangan na to i-assess ang alternatives, no? So like during the assessment of the application, of course, we can now identify asa ang importante, asa ang dili importante. But as part of the decision, as part of the decision makers, dili dayon na to i-dispose ang isa ka application, lalo na kapag say for instance, na belong siya sa category nga poor dogs, but then it shows that a lot of interactions ang gina-facilitate niya with other applications, right? So the best thing to do is to reassess the applications. Yun. So i-reassess nimo kay basin daig imo nang gi-decisionan nga oy, nabilong ka sa poor nga dogs, but then kailangan pa day ka in some part of the business process. So yun. Next to assessing alternative is to discuss unsa gid ang general IT transformation and unsa ning service-oriented architectures. Okay. So but since murag hapit na ta mag 1 hour, I guess kamo na lang kung pabasahon ani no. So ihatag ko ni sa inyo nga libro. So naa ta din nga part. So mas masabtan man siguro ninyo if kamo na lang gid ang basa. Yeah, kay murag di makaya maabot og pila ka oras ani kung i-discuss nako ni tanan, right? So naanata diri nga part, this is page 67. So balikan sa nako ang slide para lang atong i-run through unsay naa sa sunod nga mga activity or EA activity. So next to the third EA activity is assessing and building capabilities. So in this activity of enterprise architecture, it is about maturity assessment and the competence development for enterprise architecture practice and for the IT department as a whole. So this involves assessing the architecture practice and improving it. It also comprises the strategic planning of competences that must be there in the architecture team or IT department in order to work with the future set of products and standards. So ang catchwords nato dinhi are maturity assessment, architecture process improvement, competence development. So again, naana po ta diri gamiton nga mga tools kung unsaon pag-assess ang maturity sa um, inyong mga capabilities. Another is the next EA activity is about developing and enforcing standard and guidelines. This is about the monitoring technology and standards, choosing the right ones, communicating them, and applying suitable means to check that the standards and guidelines are followed accordingly. So for examples of such means are reviews of the automated tools, example code sniffers in the business environment. So the catchwords are technology radar, project governance, IT and architecture standards. And then the next enterprise architecture core activity is the monitoring the project portfolio. This is about the enterprise architect's contribution to the project portfolio management. It comprises pushing through strategic EA projects as a project owners, assessing project with respect to strategic fit and standard compliance, and installing quality gates that projects have to pass. The quality gates also give an input to the backfilling of architecture models with the project's deliverables. Our catchwords are quality management, budget planning, strategic fit, architecture compliance review. The next activity is on leading or coaching projects. So, enterprise architects are sometimes engaged to lead or coach critical, high value projects from a technical point of view. Their involvement in such projects goes beyond their usual high level advice and monitor role. Our catchwords are project architect and coaching. And then the last enterprise architecture core activity is managing risk involved in IT. So this involves EA models that allows answering questions about the risk involved in IT, like what is the impact on business processes or organizational units of server X going down. So, enterprise architects are sometimes involved in planning issues such as failover or 24/7 scenarios. They are also responsible for security guidelines and have a say on service level agreements. Catchwords are business continuity planning, security, and service level agreements. So as to the references, so mao ni siya ang ato ang mga ebooks nga ginagamit, but mas ginagamit nato ning first, and mao ni ang mga ang libro nga gihatag sa inyo ha, nga ihatag nako sa inyo ha kung wala pa nako nahatag, and I hope nga basahon ninyo ang wait chapter chapter 3. Ayan. So, mao ni siya ang content sa akong discussion nga halos naabot na siya 1 hour. So, humanon na ako, and I hope kamo na mo basag padayon for this chapter. Thank you so much for listening.